Good Wednesday evening, everyone. Scotty Powell here with the Carolinas Weather Group. Welcome to another show, and tonight we have on Rick Smith. Glad to have Rick on. We're supposed to have him on sometime in April, and severe weather just gotten away, and Rick lives out in Norman, Oklahoma, out in the Oklahoma City metro area, so it's always busy out there weather-wise. So we've kind of hit July, and it's kind of calmed down out there. So Rick's going to be joining us tonight, and he is the warning coordinator meteorologist for the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma. So he makes all the decisions on which storms get warnings and does a lot of stuff there, not only for the National Weather Service, for a lot of the communities in the Oklahoma area as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that and some of the events that Rick's been able to cover tonight. But before we get to Rick, we will kind of do a few housekeeping rules. Can't believe it is the end of July. It's hard to believe that another month is over. And with that, you are able to download all our July podcasts now. I think they're all uploaded. Ricky was able to do that over the weekend into the Apple iTunes Store or Google Play Store, however you get your podcasts. You'll be able to get those now. They're available. And if you're watching this live, we do have a question and answer tab that you are able to shoot us some questions. You can also shoot them via Facebook or Twitter. Joey monitors that, and he'll interject from time to time and ask some questions from you guys as well. If you're watching this on the replay and you have a question, send it our way, or you can send it to Rick, and we can get those questions answered. So again, this is the July 29th edition, and it's a little bit after 8 p.m. here on the East Coast and 7 p.m. In the Midwest. And I'm going to go around and let our panel introduce themselves, kind of give you a couple of notes. Ricky is running just a little bit late. He'll be here shortly. He's covering morning duty there at WCYB in the Tri-Cities area in Tennessee, so he's doing a couple of last-minute things before he hops on, so he'll be on shortly. And we're going to have Daniel. I think Daniel may be off tonight, and we're going to have Peter on as well. He kind of comes in from time to time and does some guest panelist work. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to Joey, who is in Thomasville tonight. Joey, how's the weather over there in central North Carolina?
Dry. All the storms just completely go around me. I brought my bubble with me to Thomasville.
The old bubble has followed you there to central North Carolina.
It has. Like the last 2 weeks, every storm, like there's been nothing here, and it blew up literally 10 miles past me. And I got to sit here. And the worst part is my front porch faces the other direction, so I couldn't even watch it pop up and and throw off lightning. It was all behind the house. It just made me mad.
Joey, with that bubble, Rick may need you to move out there to Oklahoma and kind of relieve him from the rain.
I will. I promise you, I can come out to Oklahoma and I will ruin severe weather. It'll be done. You'll probably lose your job. They'll close the office down after a while.
Well, be sure and answer your phone if it rings.
And tonight we have Kit joining us. I know Kit's been off the past couple of weeks. So Kit, you are, I guess, still at UNCC, or are you back home right now?
I'm still at UNCC, so we just got back for 3 more sessions of orientation here. But meanwhile, weather-wise, yesterday we went to the U.S. National Whitewater Center. I was mountain biking, and a thunderstorm popped up right over top of us in the middle of the trail. We were all covered in mud. But we just got a few showers here earlier today. The orientation was taking a lot of time out of my weather coverage, so they were saying, Kit, why is it raining right now? You didn't tell us. I was like, oops, sorry. So.
Yeah. That's not what the meteorologist major is supposed to be doing there, Kit. You're supposed to keep them up to date all the time.
I told them there was a 30% chance that the rain will continue.
There you go. Doing your job. Doing your job. All right, Kit. Well, thanks for coming on. Since it's a little bit after 8, and I think Peter's here, but I don't know if he can hear us yet, we will switch over. There he is. Peter, how are you, man? Have to turn your microphone on there. We got you. You're muted.
Wait a minute. There we go. There we go. We're good. How you doing?
Good. How's weather up in Philly this evening?
Very hot. Very hot.
How hot? I know you guys. Some of the area was on the under a heat advisory. How hot did you guys get today?
Today we got in the low 90s, I think, and tomorrow they're kind of thinking we might not reach 90 because we may have some severe weather tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes, but should be fun.
With the heat index of probably around 100 or so up there.
Yep. Right.
Fun stuff. Well. Yeah. A couple of months from now, we'll all be talking about freezing temperatures. So I guess we might as well try to take it while we can. So, Peter, thank you for joining us tonight. And I'm going to switch over to our guest tonight, Mr. Rick Smith. Rick, like I said earlier, is the warning coordinator meteorologist for the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma. And before he was there, he was in Memphis, Tennessee, and Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Dallas, Texas. So, Rick, you and I and Joey were able to meet out in February at the Oklahoma Tornado Conference, and we're glad that you're able to join us tonight.
Well, I'm really glad to be here. I hated to have to miss the episode back in April with Jared, but glad to be here tonight. And yeah, it was great meeting you guys out at the Tornado Summit, and we were glad you made it out there, and just glad to be here. I'm ready to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Rick,
Awesome.
Don't worry. Jared made sure he told us how great the SPC was and how horrible you guys are over there.
Well, we'll make up for that tonight. We'll even it out. They are great.
Jared may be watching tonight. I know he watches a lot of our shows and tweets about them. So, Jared, if you want to jump on, we'll send you the invite, and you and Rick can battle it out. No, just kidding. Rick, so you are the warning coordinator meteorologist, so that means you wear a lot of hats in the National Weather Service office there. Some days are probably a little bit easier than others, so let's kind of talk about your job and what it all entails there in Norman.
Well, the warning coordination meteorologist is, I think, the coolest job in the Weather Service, in my humble opinion. There is one at each of the 122 forecast offices around the country. There's also one at, like, the Storm Prediction Center. Greg Carbon is the WCM of the Storm Prediction Center. There's one at the Hurricane Center and other places as well. And then there's the equivalent of the warning coordination meteorologist even at the river forecast centers. What we all do is kind of the external affairs, outreach, sales, marketing, basically everything outside the office we are kind of in charge of. So a warning coordination meteorologist leads up things like the Storm Spotter program. We're in charge of making sure that all the severe weather events every month get into the official database. We're in charge of all kinds of outreach and education. We're in charge of leading a whole team of people. In my office, it's a whole bunch of people that work with emergency managers and public safety officials and the TV stations and everybody else out there, public schools, universities, you name it. And the goal of all of this is just to help the whole community, inside the office, outside the office, the public, and everybody else, be ready whenever the bad weather hits, because it's going to hit. So across the country, different WCMs have different focus, of course. In tropical areas, it's different than it is in the plains, and so. But anyway, on a normal day-to-day basis, we're usually either recovering from a past event, we are dealing with an event, or we're getting ready for the next event, learning, training, and we've been doing a lot of that. We've been continuously doing that since May of 2013, and after this past May, we've been doing it again. What could we learn? What can we do better next time? So that's kind of my job in a nutshell. There is a myth, and you mentioned this in the intro, and one of the myths about a warning coordination meteorologist is that we're responsible for the warnings. Thank goodness we're not. Thank goodness I'm not responsible for the warnings. We've got forecasters who are skilled at radar interpretation, and those are the men and women that are issuing the warning. My job is more of a coordination role. I'm part of the management team of the office, so I help to kind of organize things. But if they get really desperate, I might issue a warning occasionally.
So, Rick, talk to us a little bit about that's your normal day, but when you guys out there in the plains, I mean, the month of April, May, and June just are tireless hours upon hours out there. How does your job or how does your role switch in the office? You kind of go from the sales pitch and getting things, database updated and stuff like that. How hands-on do you get during the severe weather?
Well, personally, I get really hands-on when let's say we're gearing up for a severe weather event, a springtime severe weather event. There's a lot to do. There's a lot going on, and one of my most important jobs, I think, is establishing and maintaining relationships with our partners out in the integrated weather team that's out there. It's not just the Weather Service that does this, as we all know. It's the weather service and the emergency managers and the TV and the broadcast media. So when it's not stormy, we're developing those relationships. We're having workshops. So when it is stormy, when a storm is coming or severe weather is beginning to become more likely, we are communicating more directly and more specifically with the emergency managers. I have an email list that's got at least 700 or 800 people on it, and it goes out to even more people than that we use to communicate plain language information about upcoming weather threats. We do webinars, so we'll do a special webinar for our emergency management partners in the media. They have 100, 200, 300 people on there, and we'll just talk to them again. What do we think will happen? When's it going to happen? How bad is it going to be? So again, that we're all on the same page and ready for whatever. So before the storm, there's a lot of preparation, making sure all of our internal processes and internal equipment is up and running, making sure that we have the tools that we need. And I'm one member of a team that kind of helps to look at that. And if it's a big enough event, we're looking at staffing days in advance to see if we have enough people. So, days away from a severe weather event, we're gearing up, and if depending on how big of an event we think it's going to be, the bigger the ramp up is. So we really try to craft our message, and we try to hold back we try to gauge the severity or the urgency of the message we're providing. We try to calibrate that to how bad it's going to be. So, and that's part of my job, is part of a team of people with a lead forecaster and my boss, and is helping to kind of craft the office's message. What are we saying? How scared are we about this? What kind of words do we want to use? What graphics do we want to use? What are the concerns? Is it a weekend event? Is it a weekday event? Is school going to be in session? So these are all discussions that I'm a part of, and again, I work with 27 extremely brilliant people, and none of this would work without them. So I'm a member of a team that does all that work.
So Rick, you're talking about how to communicate that threat that may be coming or looming in the next day or two. One of your job titles is going out and doing the weather ready stuff with some of the EMs, but it's also to inform the public. How receptive is the public in Oklahoma, a storm-battled state? How receptive are they to your information, and how much do they rely on you guys versus maybe their favorite media station out there to get weather on those severe weather days?
Well, I think Oklahoma's like most other places. I think the average person probably relies on their favorite TV meteorologist to get their day-to-day weather information, especially during severe weather or flooding or winter storms. We work very closely with them, so we coordinate with them, and obviously our goal, sometimes it's an extremely lofty goal, our goal is to have a unified message and try to be saying basically the same thing. But we do there are some weather-savvy people that come directly to us. I mean, we have a web page, and we're extremely active on social media, so we have a pretty big following on social media. So we interact as directly as we can with the public. Really, until we got on Twitter and Facebook, we really didn't have a good way to do that. Weather radio was really the only way we could talk directly to someone. Everything else was relayed messages. So people are very receptive to weather information here. They have to be. I mean, they have to pay attention to weather. They have to know the threats and whether there's outlets, watches, and warnings in effect. And I think we have very weather-savvy communities here in Oklahoma. And my office covers the western two-thirds of Oklahoma, 48 counties in Oklahoma, and also 8 counties in Texas. So we have a large area to talk to. It goes from very, very rural, where there may be, we've issued warnings with one person in the polygon before, to the Oklahoma City metro area, where we have over, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people clustered in a tight space. So we try to get the message out to. A lot of times it's indirect, though. A lot of times what we're saying, a lot of what we do and a lot of what I do is directed toward the people that are the direct spokespersons about the weather, the emergency manager in the local city or county, and especially the TV meteorologist, because that's where people go to get their weather information around here.
I was going to say, you guys are fairly active on social media. I follow you guys a lot, and some of your tweets and Facebook posts did get several thousand shares during the peak of May, and especially during the flooding this season. Talk about a little bit about that this year, how it's really gotten the word out to those maybe in the rural areas and maybe are more tuned to social media than they are turning on a TV.
Yeah, there's some cases where social media plays an even more important role. I mean, we were doing, don't tell anybody, but we were doing social media before we were really supposed to be doing social media. We'll call us trailblazers or pioneers or mavericks, or I don't know what you want to call us, but we developed a following, and we saw the importance of it, and so we've been sharing information on social media. So we try to be innovative. We try to talk like people instead of talking like geeky meteorologists with big words and all capital letters. We try to relate to people. And what we saw after May of 2013 especially was we heard from people that live in rural areas. Sometimes sometimes the TV stations may not be covering in as great a detail a storm over rural western Oklahoma as they might a storm over the Oklahoma City metro area or moving into Moore or Norman. And so our job is to provide weather information on as consistent a basis as possible. Every one of our 56 counties is just as important as the other. So social media gives us an avenue to talk to those people in Cement, Oklahoma, or Godibo, Oklahoma, or Archer City, Texas, that may not be getting coverage on television. Or what we heard a lot is people who lost power or didn't have TV service because whatever. Social media kind of was their lifeline. So we treat social media as one of the highest priorities in the office. We bring in people to actually take care of the social media. In this past spring, we actually had multiple people doing social media at the same time. It got so busy.
And I did see I don't know if you're continuing that because I haven't seen as much. I'm not on Twitter all the time, but you're starting to do a little bit of periscoping as well. Has that really taken off in your area? Just something you're still experimenting with, or?
That's something I'm personally experimenting with. The Weather Service is looking into it, but there's some, I don't know. It's a Periscope is owned by Twitter. It's a Twitter service, but so I'm hopeful we'll be able to get that. I think it's been the few little tests that I've done personally. It's been pretty successful. I did a little bit on a damage survey I went on this past May and did some during severe weather operations, just little short clips, but. I think it's interesting. I think we can get a lot of information out, and people love to see behind the scenes. People love to see who's issuing the warnings, and we love for people to see that we've got a lot of dedicated men and women there sitting in those chairs. It's not computers that are doing this work. It's guys and gals that live in the community and that are giving up, that are sacrificing whatever, obviously it's their job to do that, but I mean, so we enjoy both sides of that. We enjoy being able to show people what we do and to show people behind the scenes of who's doing the job.
And Rick, excuse me, let me jump in here real quick, and first off, glad to have you on, and glad I was able to finally make it. I was in Asheville earlier, so that's why I wasn't on the start. But anyway, if you remember that article that came out a few months ago now, I guess, from the Weather Service in Birmingham, talking about how they were going to do more web stuff and video stuff. Do you kind of see that maybe as a route where Periscope can come in and be something like that?
I think so. First of all, I think that article was overblown. Yeah. Not the article itself, but the reaction to that was overblown. I don't think that some people took that to mean that the Weather Service in Birmingham was installing a TV studio because they're going to take on the TV stations and do their own wall-to-wall coverage. And first of all, we're not cut out to do that. Most of us, we're not TV meteorologists. I couldn't do that job if I even wanted to. That's a whole different ball game. And I think what we do want to do though is the Weather Service wants to be able to have a professional appearance. If we do a Skype interview with the Weather Channel, which we did a whole bunch of this past spring, if we do a Skype interview with one of our distant TV stations that's 3 hours away, and they want to do a 90-second interview, well, it's not, sometimes it's not always feasible to make a 7 or 8 hour trip to do a 90-second interview. So we want to have a professional appearance if we do that type of thing. It's not a matter of, establishing a TV presence or anything like that. Periscope is one way we could do that. I think Periscope is one way to give little short updates. One thing I'd like to see us be on Instagram. I'd like to see us, the Weather Service, be on Instagram, and I think those 15-second videos that you can post on Instagram, you can say a lot in 15 seconds, weather-wise, and we even started experimenting with the Twitter videos this past spring as well. We did some Twitter videos where we showed people issuing warnings or showed coordination calls with the SPC. You know, it's a good way to get information out, and Periscope and Twitter videos and things like that I think are a great tool to use.
Well, Ricky, we were talking a little bit earlier. We'll kind of shift a little gears here from social media to events that you've covered there while you've been in Norman. Let's talk about, I guess, something more recent. This past May and June, you guys had several tornado outbreaks and even some flooding. Kind of talk to us a little bit as you're wrapping up. I know before the show you're still putting in the numbers for how many actual tornadoes touched down in May. Kind of recap this past spring, severe weather-wise, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about the 2013 season.
Well, spring in our area started out back in late March. We had a tornado event in late March in the Oklahoma City metro area. Didn't turn out exactly like we would have hoped in a perfect world, but we learned from it and we moved on and made some actual changes to operations. So we as we came into spring, the heart of severe weather season, we had implemented some changes and we're ready to go and ready to try some new things out. And we got plenty of chances. Starting about on May the 5th, we had a prolonged period of severe weather, almost daily, all the way through the end of the month. I think we issued a record number of tornado warnings, a record number of flash flood warnings. I can't remember the numbers. You would think I would be able to recite them in my sleep, but they all run together. It was just high numbers of warnings, lots and lots of overtime. We almost set a record for the most overtime ever in our office, but we didn't break the May 2013 record. So there was a lot going on, and it ranged from everything. It ranged from tornadoes, and we really had very few of the classic dry line, what you think of as Oklahoma severe weather with isolated supercells and these classic long-lived picturesque sculpted supercells or tornadoes. I mean, we had a lot of, it's almost like tropical-like stuff. We had low-top supercells. We had one Saturday we went into work and we had what we in the office term is a tropical wedge tornado. I mean, there was like cloud bases. It seemed like they were 2 feet off the ground in this huge tornado out just southwest of Oklahoma City. We had flooding. We had record flooding. We had never issued a flash flood emergency before May, and by the end of May we'd issued I think 3 or 4 of them. So it's just been nonstop, and the staff put in exceptionally long hours, and you know we only have so many people. That's another myth about the Norman office, is people think we have an unlimited supply of staff. You know, we've got the Severe Storms Lab, the Storm Prediction Center. People think there's a fire pole somewhere hidden in the office that students slide down and come issue the warnings for us or something. And I asked my wife, and you can look at my timesheet. I got a picture of it somewhere. You know, that's not how it works. So there was a lot of long hours, and so I mean that's what we're there for. That's what we do. But we dealt with multiple days of tornadoes, flooding, hail. And I was telling you before the show, we had a couple of days there in early May where several of our staff members are actually impacted by the storm, and some of us are still dealing with that.
Rick, you mentioned, I hate to dig up a buried hatchet or anything, but you mentioned that in a little incident back in March when things didn't work out quite like the National Weather Service wanted. You said you implemented some changes. That's actually something that I believe the night that happened was, well, I think it must have been a Wednesday night or something. I think we were all here and we were watching that kind of as it unfolded. What changes did you guys make to kind of improve that situation?
Well, we made, it's mainly internal changes, mainly just how our operations run. We did things like we didn't really have an assigned seating arrangement in our office, so people were kind of scattered out, and the communication and the coordination, collaboration within the office among the forecasters and among the information coordinators was not as smooth as it could be or should be. So for the severe weather events in May, we had kind of a seating chart, and we, if you're a warning forecaster number 1, you sit in this chair. Warning forecaster number 2 sits here. We moved our information coordinator position, which had been on the outside edge of the office with our back turned toward everybody else. We moved that into the middle prominent spot right in front of the two primary warning forecasters. Because one of the issues in March was communication. So we worked on that. And other things too. Those were the biggest things. How we monitor media coverage of severe weather, and how we now we're a little bit more organized now as far as having, we've always been a big proponent of sectorizing our warning operations. Say if we've got too many storms for one forecaster to handle, we'll break it up and say, okay, we got 2 warning forecasters now. You take everything west of I-35, I'll take everything east of I-35, or I'll take this storm headed toward the metro, you take everything else. Well, we did that with social media this year too. So we sectorized geographically, we sectorized by hazards. So there were more than one occasion when I was there where we said, okay, I'll do the tornado tweets, you do the flash flood tweets. And so I just think we were better organized and better positioned physically and mentally, I guess, to deal with what was coming up. And I'm proud of the staff. I think they recovered well and did a great job.
I'm really glad to hear that. We had a lot of discussions through on social media through other people about that incident, and then these guys say, I was one that said, yes, you guys made a mistake that day, and but that's fine. It happens. I was really wanting to hear how you guys went about correcting it. It sounds like you guys did a great job making sure you're better organized and helping with that communication. That kind of leads me to another question while I'm thinking about it. What is the National Weather Service's relationship with the local, TV meteorologists? I mean, is it just a working relationship and you guys generally get along, or are there beef from time to time? Sometimes there's disagreements. I mean, just how's your relationship with them?
In a word, it's great. I mean, overall, it's great. I mean, we've always had a good working relationship with the media. After the May 2013 tornadoes, we worked to make it even better. I mean, we've done some things to collaborate more and to work together more. We wanted to learn more about how they do their job, and we wanted them to learn more about how we did our job. So we stole some ideas from other weather service offices who have done these job shadow things. So one of the things we did was invite every TV meteorologist, not just Oklahoma City, but Lawton, Wichita Falls, Sherman Dennis, and all the station markets that cover our county warning area to come into the office. And we had a big turnout. We had lots of people from just about every station came. Some came for an hour, some came for 8 hours. And I can't tell you how valuable that was to sit down and just talk one-on-one with them and listen to their questions and understand, or listen to some of the misconceptions that they have about why we do what we do, how we do it, why we don't do something, why we do something. It cleared up a lot, and we've enhanced the communication because of that. We are much more active in NWS chat because of that. We've changed the way we do some things with regard to chat and social media. It's been great, and we've also had the opportunity to go and visit at least one of the Oklahoma City TV stations, kind of a reciprocal thing where we go and shadow one of the TV meteorologists in Oklahoma City and see how they do their job, and it's really helped us to get a better understanding. We've had media workshops where all the TV stations are invited to come to our building, and we do a kind of a workshop to talk about winter weather and severe weather. We've done 2 of them. Never done that before, but it's been very, very successful. And you guys were at the Tornado Summit, where I actually had a panel discussion with meteorologists from from 4 of the Oklahoma City TV stations there all together talking about what we do. That probably wouldn't have happened 5 years ago, but I think the relations are very, very good. We got work to do, though. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I mean, we're not perfect. There's consistency concerns with different outlooks from different stations, different terminology, different colors, different words. There are concerns about different things with severe weather coverage, and and it's not our position to tell people what to do or what not to do or to police that. Or what we're trying to do is just open up the lines of communication, to have open communication so they know exactly what we're doing and we know what they're doing, and you know, those were big steps that we took, but we got a lot more steps to take, I think.
For the record, I'm completely on board with you on the whole using the same colors and the same terminology. I think that's a big step to not. I think less confusion in the public is a big deal. I never think the National Weather Service should tell somebody how to forecast. Obviously, they're welcome to forecast however they want. But I think using the same general terms and the same colors and things like that'd be a big step. Rick, I'm kind of known for the guy who'll ask a tough question. I'd be dismissed not to ask it in this conversation. We talked about the broadcast meteorologist. We know there's a little bit of a gap between the National Weather Service and a lot of private sector companies. Is there a way to mend that bridge? I mean, are we trying to mend that bridge? How's that working out?
I think everything is fine overall with all the private sector, and and I think I know what you're asking about, but there's been open and frank discussions with some of the folks involved in some of that aftermath of the March events, for example. Everything's fine. We rely very heavily on the private sector, whether it's AccuWeather, the Weather Channel, Weather Nation, Weather Network, Weather News, WDT, you name it. There's a whole long list, and they play an important role in what we do. They do things we can't do, or we're not allowed to do, or couldn't do if we were allowed to do it. So we're all partners, and my personal philosophy is try to stay out of as much of that as possible, and our jobs are hard enough as it is when we're all getting along and all happy and holding hands, and everything's perfectly harmonious. It's the last thing we need is more complications to that.
I agree completely. I think my words back during that time period was, "Have we forgot about the people?" Because that's what we're all supposed to be doing here.
All of us, yeah. That's what we're all supposed to be here for. But I hope I answered your question. If I didn't, follow up. But yeah, everything's cool.
Yeah, you did, and that's kind of what I was wanting to touch on, without bringing up again. Like you said, we don't need any more drama anyway. But yeah, I was just kind of curious how that there was an obvious gap there. I don't think anybody in this enterprise didn't see that. But yeah, it's just good to know that things are smooth, because like I said back then, we're supposed to be protecting the people. That's our job here.
Yep.
So that's what we should be focused on. Kid, I think you had a question.
Yeah, it's just sort of to piggyback off of what Joey was saying earlier about communication to other local news stations.
Mm-hmm.
What is the communication between neighboring weather forecast offices? So, like you in Oklahoma City, how do you communicate to other forecast offices around your area on those counties that are the border ones?
That's a great question. We've got a variety of ways that we do that. A lot of people are familiar with NWS Chat. That's one way, but we also have an internal chat room. It's called 12 Planet, and that is a internal chat on our AWIP system that we can use to communicate with adjacent offices, to coordinate forecast issues. Hey, I'm thinking about a flash flood watch. Let's make sure the counties match up with HPC, with SPC, with whoever else. So we use that extensively. We also pick up the phone and call. So in the Weather Service right now, consistency is one of the biggest goals and one of the biggest issues. So it bugs me just as much as it bugs everybody else to see those weird boundaries, on those weird lines or gaps or holes on CWA boundaries, or why is that county not included and every other county around it is. And the Weather Service is working on that. That's a priority, and that coordination that you asked about between all the other offices is critical. And we coordinate sometimes verbally, and sometimes it just happens that, like if a storm's moving out of North Texas, out of the Fort Worth forecast area and moving into ours, we'll obviously be very keyed in on what reports they're getting, what they're doing with the warnings, and how their warnings are configured. We like to try to match those up as closely as we can. So we're all about, we're one weather service, and I probably don't need to tell the meteorologists here watching or you guys that some meteorologists have big egos. We're proud of what we do, and we take pride in our warnings and our forecasts. And one of the issues in the Weather Service is moving away from this is my warning, this is Rick's warning or Rick's forecast. This is the Weather Service's forecast or warning. So it's a long rambling answer to your question, but yeah, we do collaborate and coordinate, and one of the big goals is that consistency.
Rick, piggybacking off of that, sorry, Kit. So piggybacking off of that, talk about forecaster preference. Is there anything in a Weather Service office that kind of says, don't deviate 20 degrees from the temperature forecasted last shift? I know obviously they talk to each other, but is there any guidelines that are in place?
There's not really any hard guidelines in our office. I don't know about other offices. I doubt it. I mean, obviously, we're all professional meteorologists, and like I said, there's still a lot across the Weather Service and across the meteorological community in general. There's a lot of this is mine, or I just have a gut feeling that it's going to be 80 on Saturday versus 60, what everybody else is forecasting. If you go out with 80, well, that's the dilemma to some extent. But there's no real guidance or no rules in our office about it. It's just there's a lot of emphasis put on shift-to-shift collaboration and consistency. If there's a reason to make a wild swing in the forecast or to change something, if it's science-based and it makes sense and hopefully agrees with adjacent offices, then there's nothing to say you couldn't do that. But we certainly don't want a lot of seesawing back and forth on the forecast, especially for dealing with any kind of hazardous weather or even pops, even chances of rain. If we go, the midnight shift said 20, and then the day shift said 60, and then the evening shift said 4. We try to avoid that, but it usually just happens within the office. We all work with each other so much. We all know each other. We're aware of each other's biases to some extent, and so that kind of smooths itself out naturally.
I thought Joey had a follow-up question with communication. Joey?
I did. Sorry, my son popped in the room for a second there. Yeah, we were discussing communication with different groups. I had one other question wrote down that I was going to ask tonight. I figured I'd throw it in here. Speaking of another group that you guys communicate with, what about storm chasers? Would you call them friends or foes? I mean, how do you guys work with those out there? And is it a good relationship?
That answer will vary probably depending on which WCM or which office you talk to. So I can't answer for any other one. My answer is I like storm chasers in general. It's just like everything else, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this. You can't paint all storm chasers with one brush. There's some real idiots out there. There's some people doing ridiculous things, and a handful of people can give the whole group a bad name. There's a lot of public safety agencies and emergency managers in my area that have kind of painted storm chasers with one brush, and they just don't like them. They don't they hear of the traffic issues and all the stories. Personally, we get valuable information from chasers. One of the most common ways that we get reports is through Spotter Network, because when somebody's a member of Spotter Network and they submit a report, it is ported automatically into the appropriate office's NWS chat room. And it used to, I don't think it does anymore, but it used to alarm on our AWIPS workstation. So we know that those people have at least gone to a little bit of trouble to get some training and to stay, those reports are quality controlled periodically. So I can tell you that our jobs would be more difficult if it weren't for chasers to some extent. Our spotter training would be a heck of a lot more boring if it weren't for storm chasers, because that's where 95% of the material comes from, videos, pictures. Again, there's some people out there that are, in my opinion, doing it wrong and doing it for the wrong reasons, but there's plenty of people out there, in my estimation, that contribute to what we do, that contribute to our mission, whether it's before, during, or after the event. And so we've gotten some valuable information from chasers. So we're not one of those offices that has a picture of a chaser with a red X through it or anything. I mean, we're we're open-minded, and if you're reasonable and give us good information, I don't care who you are. I mean, we'll take the information. If you do something stupid, then that's going to affect how we process that.
It's great. I know here in the Carolinas we have a decent spotter network. Obviously nowhere near as active as it is out there in the plains, but we definitely, all of us here, one thing that our group, not Carolina Weather Group, but our private company does is we collect a lot of reports from the general public and try to weed out some of the stuff we know is not right, send it to the National Weather Service, and we have a good working relationship with you guys there. That was the only question I have, guys. So,
well, Joey, it's kind of a good way to kind of piggyback where spotters was an important role in 2013, and the communication after the event has really improved after 2013. So, Rick, maybe for the next few minutes, and after that, I think we just have a couple of just topic questions, just a couple questions to ask. But before we do that, maybe we can just talk a little bit about the year of 2013. I mean, that was a very memorable year for you guys out there in the Norman and Moore and Oklahoma City area.
Yeah, it certainly was, and certainly a couple of weeks in May there, from May 19th to May 31st, really changed thousands of people's lives in the community, and it changed our lives in the Weather Service office. We had tornadoes, big tornadoes on 3 of those days, and we had severe weather a lot of the other days. The May 20th event that happened just up the road from us here, that hit, the May 20th EF5 tornado that hit Newcastle and Oklahoma City and more. We deal with tornadoes all the time, but that really hit the office hard personally, because these are places where we shop. These are places where we go to movies. My wife worked for a short time in that hospital in Moore that was destroyed. A school, 3 schools were hit. Children were killed. So it really had a lasting impact on the office. It certainly changed some of us in that way, but it gave us a lot of visibility and a lot of opportunities to tell the story of how we did things in the office and those partnerships and relationships we had talking about. So, as soon as we got into May of 2013, one of my goals personally, and tried to transfer it to an office goal, is to try to get something positive out of this horrible stuff that happened, and I think we've done that. I think we've been able to spread the word about the importance of social media. We've spread the word about how important it is to work with everybody in your community, not just the traditional emergency managers, but that relationship we had with the hospital was critical. So we've tried to turn bad things into good things as much as we can. But it's I say this over and over again. May 2013 is still going on. It never ended. There isn't a week that goes by that we don't do an interview about it, or we're not talking about it, or remembering it, or researching it, or so it's just like the April 27th, 2011. Anywhere that's affected by big tornadoes, it's not a unique thing to Oklahoma. It stays with you for a long, long time, and we'll be talking about that for, we're still talking about May 3rd, 99. So I mean, it's here forever.
Mike Morgan talks about May 3rd, 1999, and every tornado. I don't know what you're talking about.
Like I said, it lives on forever.
Sorry, I had my microphone off there. Rick, kind of talk to us that day in the office before the event started. Kind of just put us there. What was the thoughts leading into the event? How were you guys staffed? What was the game plan going into that afternoon?
Well, May 20th of 2013 was the third day of kind of a tree of severe weather days that we'd been anticipating for a while. We had May 20th was a Monday, so Saturday we'd worked severe weather, and some of us were there, many of us were there 12, 14, 16 hours. Didn't have a lot of tornadoes that day, but we had severe weather, a dust storm closed I-35. It was still a big day. May 19th, a Sunday, we had what turned out to be an EF4 tornado that developed. The wall cloud developed right on top of the office, and we were looking at the wall cloud rotating over the office and over the building, not too far east of the office. The tornado developed, so we'd had a close call that day, just in the immediate Norman and Oklahoma City area, and had a couple of fatalities. But we had kind of feared all along that May 20th would be the grand finale of those 3 days. So going to bed on the Sunday night, May 19th, hoping that we would wake up and see that something had changed, that there was a thick overcast or that the models had trended differently. And when we wake up and see we've got, south winds and it's muggy and high dew points, and some days you just have that feeling. You can smell it and feel it. So we certainly did that day. I was tweeting stuff even from the office account before I left home, and that's some of the tweets about, attention school systems, you need to be prepared for storms, because one of the weird things that we knew it was going to happen on May 20th was it wasn't going to be your typical Oklahoma 4 to 7 o'clock tornadoes. It was going to be 1 to 4, earlier in the day when school was in session. So we emphasized that. Got into the office and just went into high gear. We had a meeting early in the morning with all the management staff and said, what's our message, where are we going? And let's go. So we started briefing emergency managers and doing interviews and conference calls, and we were strapped in and ready to go by early afternoon, and then things started happening. And even after all that preparation, and when you see it developing and you see the spot it's developing in, and we've seen that happen enough times to know that bad things, if the tornado develops right there from that storm, we're going to have big issues. And then it becomes kind of surreal. It's like you're detached, or you're not. Is this really happening? Or but everybody in the office is on autopilot. We were staffed up. We'd been staffed up. We had talked about staffing probably the Friday before that to be sure that we had staffing. We had one forecaster who came in on her day off and worked 13 hours. We had an information coordinator doing social media. So we were well staffed. At one point, I think during the heart of the event, we had 3 people issuing tornado warnings, because it wasn't just the Moore storm. It was a whole line of tornadic supercells all the way down into Texas. So it was. There's video online. You can go on our YouTube channel, and it's out there. Somebody shot video inside the operations area during the event, and most people watch it and go, that's boring. Is that really? Was that? I mean, that was during the time the tornado was on the ground, and everybody had a job to do, and they did it. They did it professionally, and there's no running around screaming and flailing arms or anything like that. I think we were geared up and ready to go, and then it's like I said, it's been almost nonstop since.
How important, or what is it like? We were talking about the media, news station wise. Was it Damon and I guess Gary was still on air there? Were they calling you guys, or maybe some of their meteorologists there, calling you guys updates? I know you do a lot on chat, but I mean, I can't imagine, the several tornadoes on the ground and all the chaos that's going on in your office, but it's controlled chaos. Everybody's doing their job. I'm sure you were pulled many ways that day.
Yeah, we weren't, and typically we're not communicating directly with the TV stations like with specific things. I mean, they'll chat with us, or I don't know, text or something, and give us a report of something that's going on that we may not know about. We're watching all the TV stations, so we have 4 monitors that are up there, and we can switch over and listen to any one of them. So we're collecting information from them as they're getting it. On the May 20th event, all the Oklahoma City stations were obviously focused on that Oklahoma City storm, but there were also tornadic supercells down into southwest Oklahoma. So we really relied on amateur radio storm spotters to help us in that case, because we didn't have helicopters flying around the storms down southwest of Oklahoma City, 60, 80 miles southwest of Oklahoma City. So we were kind of doing the old school way of storm spotters, giving us verbal descriptions. So we got the phone ringing, we got chat, we got 4 or 5 amateur radios, we've got an 800 megahertz radio with the state, we've got just all kinds of ways that information's coming in. So and that's one of the things that people don't realize about that event is how much more was going on. It's enough to have that one big mile-wide tornado going through just a few miles up the road from the office, but everything else that was going on. And we didn't stop issuing warnings until sometime around noon the next day.
Wow. Well, for you personally, and we'll kind of wrap up the 2013 part of this. We always ask. We've had Mark Prater on, James Spann, and they've talked about the Tuscaloosa tornado. We've had Gary on, and he's talked about the tornadoes in 2013. But they all had one memory that kind of just set in their mind, and still to this day, they can kind of relive it. Do you have that one memory, one thing that you heard or saw on radar, and you're just like, man, and it's just stuck with you? You know, I know you said you're still reliving 2013 today, but is there that one moment that just kind of just captured your attention?
There's probably a lot. I'll always remember sitting in my boss's office, me and my boss and the lead forecaster that day, and just the look on everybody's faces, and this was 8:15, 8:30 in the morning, and just the look on everybody's faces thinking, we were trying to come up with a reason this wasn't going to happen, and we just couldn't, and just that feeling of crap, you know, we're going to have to deal with this today. And then there was it's not really a lighter moment, but it kind of is. If you're familiar, my boss, David Andrew, was the person who was responsible for the original tornado emergency back on May 3rd, 99. He was working, and he's the one that invented that wording on the fly to get across to people, hey, Oklahoma City, this is different. So he invented that on the fly, and since then, you know, it's become a huge deal. You know, it's a thing. One of the most surreal moments of the May 20th event was my boss walking over to me before we even had a severe thunderstorm warning out on that storm developing near Newcastle, and not whispering, but we didn't really want to get people riled up yet but in the office, but, you know, telling me that we needed to look up in the rule book or in the directives, the Weather Service rule book, the proper way to issue a tornado emergency should we need one. I don't know, that was kind of funny, and it's just kind of weird that he's the one that made it up on the fly, and now it's become a thing in the rule book, and now we had to look up the proper way to do it so we didn't get in trouble. So those are two memories that I'll never forget, but there's a lot of others. I mean, walking the damage path and talking to parents whose kids were in those schools, and I don't know, you could go on, but yeah, it's something that every meteorologist, you know, James and you know, the people that you talk to from the Alabama events, and everybody that goes through this has these things that'll always be with you.
And speaking of damage, I know you do a lot of damage surveys. We haven't even touched on that, so maybe we can have you on later on this year and talk a little bit about damage surveys, because that's a whole different topic, and how you guys categorize the tornadoes on the EF scale. So maybe we can book you for that in the coming months. But from that, we'll kind of switch over. I know we're coming up on the 9 o'clock hour, just a few minutes before that. So we're kind of in the conversation with some of our panelists. I know they may have some questions and stuff. I think Peter has one right now, so I'm going to flip it or give it to him so he can ask his question.
Rick, I wanted to ask you, how seriously do you think people in Oklahoma take the watches and warnings? Because here in Philly, when we get tornado watches and stuff, people don't really take it that seriously. They always think, oh, we're not going to get anything, you know, it's just not going to hit me, whatever. So how seriously do you think people take it over there?
I think overall, if you did an average of the entire population, I think we're above average as far as treating it seriously. It all really depends on what your past or most recent experience has been. I can tell you, if you were anywhere in the Oklahoma City metro area and you lived here in 2013 or even all the way back to 99, you probably treat it pretty seriously because you know what can happen. The people that we sometimes have challenges with are people that just moved here or people that may not be familiar with it. We have our fair share of people that are like, tornadoes never happen here. They go around us. They don't hit Norman. They hit Moore. This river will protect us. You know, we've got all that kind of business going on. But I think overall, I think the awareness is higher, or it seems to me to be high here, and I think people generally take the watches and warnings fairly seriously. I think there's still a big element of I'll believe it when I see it, and I'll do something when I see it.
Rick, we're coming in on almost the 1-year anniversary of the SPC doing their new category outlooks. How do you feel that's progressed? Do you think it's progressed good? Do you think one thing that we get, TV-wise and broadcasting-wise, some of our meteorologist friends have told us, if you give them this big list of or words, some of them can be confusing and marginal. What does that mean? Or slight, is that going to be no storms or just a little bit of storms? How do you feel about that? How do you think the progress has went with the new categories?
Well, first of all, I really applaud what the SPC has done and how they did it. I mean, they have gotten assistance and advice and guidance from communications experts and social scientists, and that's good. That's a positive thing. Is the system exactly where it needs to be, and is it perfect? No, I don't think so. I think this was it was implemented, we had it in place in 2014, but we didn't really have a lot of weather here. So this was our first spring to really go through a lot of weather. I can tell you people are confused. People are confused. There's a significant portion of the population that we hear from that think enhanced is worse than a high or a moderate. There's people that don't know what marginal means. Does marginal refer to the coverage? Does marginal refer to the intensity of the storms? So I think there's some work to do, and there's some improvements to be made. I think I think what they're trying to do at the SPC and extending into the Weather Service forecast offices is try to make it easier in the long run for people to understand by giving them, okay, if you understand words better, here's some words. If you understand colors better, here's some colors. If you understand 1 to 5, here's some numbers for you. So there's growing pains, and it's not perfect, and we've heard a lot of, we got a fair amount of confusion, from some of the public we interacted with, but I'm not saying scrap it. I'm not saying it's a horrible thing. I'm saying we got to give it some time and tweak it and maybe make it better.
One last question from me, and then I promise I'll let the other guys finish up. We had a meteorologist on, I guess it's been almost a year now, Dan Bigford. He's a weekend meteorologist for a channel out of Greenville, South Carolina, and he was talking about the process of the National Weather Service kind of debating on warning these smaller spin-up tornadoes that may be only on the ground for a minute or two. We see that a lot here in the Carolinas, to be honest with you. What is your thoughts on that? Do you think every storm should be warned? These small storms, should they just be severe weather warned with the hashtag of, hey, there may be a tornado that briefly spins up? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you waited till right at the end to open up a whole can of worms. No, it's that you could get a big debate going. You could have a whole show, get a couple of meteorologists on and debate that topic for a whole hour. Some are very purist and believe that if it's a tornado, it needs a tornado warning. Me, and to some extent our office philosophy is we have to consider the impacts of not only the storm but of the warning. There are real consequences for issuing a tornado warning, and if we here in Norman were to issue a tornado warning every time there was a little spinny circulation or we expected a little whirl on the front of a gust front or something like that, citizens would be planting dynamite at the base of warning sirens in the middle of the night, and there would be weather radios being burned in the streets. I mean, it's just not. I don't know. There would be a lot of warnings, and we have those storms too. Just because we're in Oklahoma doesn't mean we just get the big, nice, easy, shooting fish in a barrel supercell type storms, and we get that. Those storms too. So it's a hard thing to decide, and I think it's really hard to set hard criteria or say yes or no, black or white. Tornadoes and warnings aren't really black and white, and you can have. I still believe that we can do more harm with a tornado warning than the storm itself would do if it did produce a brief tornado. So. That's not an answer, but it's a mess. It's a messy topic. There's a lot of layers there, and if I think there's going to be a tornado and I think there's a reason for people to take shelter, I want them to have a tornado warning, but I don't think it's reasonable to expect us to issue a tornado warning for every little. Oh, I saw a whirl of dust for 0.2 seconds in the field. That's you wouldn't want to live in a place like that. I don't think.
I think.
Well, that sounds like another show topic.
I was gonna say I think we can. We may have to start booking some guests for that show.
I had one question, but bounce back a little bit. We were talking about communication with the public and them understanding, the message you're trying to convey. And I've heard this come up a couple times before. What about, our non-English speaking residents? Is the National Weather Service, are they looking into anything, or are there any plans in the future for that?
Oh yeah, that's been a huge topic for quite a while. We've actually been delving into that a little bit in our office since probably 2002, 2003. We started, really started to look at that. But of course, it really came to light after May 2013 when we had quite a few fatalities of Spanish-speaking people in the area from the flooding and the tornadoes back on May 31st. So we're working even more closely now with our local Spanish-speaking station, the Telemundo affiliate. They actually have a full-time meteorologist who's we work very closely with, and he's been to our job shadow experience in the office, and he comes out all the time. And so we're working with them. We're involved with the university with a group of students who are doing research into how the Spanish-speaking community here gathers weather information and how they process it. They've got some fascinating results from that. We're working with the Red Cross. We're doing a lot. We need to do more. Last week we had some meteorologists visiting the office from other Weather Service offices, and one of them was from the Key West office, and she is a member of the Spanish translation team, which is new in the Weather Service. So she was telling me that if we had anything we needed to be translated into Spanish, that they have a whole team of meteorologists now in the Weather Service that can do that. Because we've learned that just putting something in Google Translate or doing a literal word-for-word translation of something, a tornado warning, for example, doesn't get the message across. Because if you literally translate tornado warning into Spanish, the meaning is not the same as what we would want to convey. The warning comes out as another word that doesn't mean as big a deal as we want to convey. So, long answer, we're very aware of that issue, and we're working on it very hard, and we've got a lot of good partnerships, more partnerships than we've ever had, who are helping us with that, or we're helping them. We're helping each other.
That's great. I know that we run into it a lot of times when we, just the text of the warning confuses English-speaking people sometimes.
Exactly.
So stay with them. I think Kit had a question. I'll let him jump in. I do have one very final question that I ask every guest on our show, but I think Kit had another question, so I'll let him go ahead.
So mine deals with the actual polygons. We've talked about this before a couple times, but we'll be watching the radar in our own little private group, and we'll see two different polygons that overlap one another, whether they be a late one and a new one, or two different cells, and they just cover the same area. Like, what does that usually mean, and how can that sometimes be prevented for confusion purposes?
That can result from a whole bunch of different things. A couple of scenarios. There's a small storm in the northern part of the county that's moving toward the east, and you issue a polygon for it, trying to keep it small. Then all of a sudden a new cell develops on the southwest edge of that, or it starts kind of back building down to the south, so you don't have that new cell covered, or the storm turns, or any number of things. You got the motion wrong or a little bit off. You thought it was moving more northeast than it was east when you first drew the polygon, or the storm has shifted or morphed or propagated in a different direction. Sometimes it may be the result of having two people issuing the warnings really close to each other, and there might be a breakdown in communication. Oh, I issued a warning for that. I thought I was covering Oklahoma County. I thought I was covering it. So that's you can't point to one thing and say what it is. And sometimes overlapping warnings aren't. Sometimes they can't be avoided. What I hate to see is when an office issues a polygon and then waits until the very last minute, until it's just about to move out of the polygon, before they issue the new polygon, because they don't want to overlap the warnings. To me, having lead time for the people in the warning is more important than whether it's overlapping or not. So it is confusing especially if you're in two kinds of warnings. So yeah, overlap is something we usually try to avoid, but it's not always a bad thing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so it seems like if it's changed from when you initially had put it up there, it just is something that's sort of unavoidable.
Sometimes it is, and again, we try and we try to, yeah, we try to coordinate that and make sure that doesn't happen, but sometimes it will. It's just the way it goes.
And sometimes a severe thunderstorm could turn tornadic in the next frame.
Yeah, and then there's debate among some about how to handle a tornadic supercell. Do you issue a tornado warning just for where you think the tornado is going to go? Do you issue the tornado warning for the entire storm where the hail might be, or do you issue it a separate severe and a warning for it? So there's 122 different offices, and with 10 meteorologists in each, there's 1,200 different philosophies, I guess, on exactly what the best way to do that is. But we do have training in the Weather Service, and we do try to be consistent among offices, between offices, so it's not totally the Wild West.
All right, Rick. Austin had to drop out. I know Austin didn't get a chance to really speak much. Austin is we call Austin the future. We had him on as a guest because he was, at the time, I think he was 14, and he was really into weather. So we was like, hey, come on, and let's just talk about kids and how they enjoy the weather. And he was so
cool.
good, we invite him back every week.
That's awesome.
But anyway, he had a question he wanted me to ask. He said, let me see exactly how he wrote that. He said he was talking about the enhanced risk. He said about the public losing hope in the enhanced risk. And we had so many enhanced risk days that ended up failing, especially I think we've had a few over here in the council, but I think you guys have had a few out there too. Mm-hmm. And do you have an opinion on maybe why that was occurring so often?
I don't know. Like I said, this was really the first big test of the new five level scale, the 5-level system. And so, I wouldn't, the SPC, I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking at that. They look at their verification for every event, and they don't want to issue an enhanced risk if they don't need it and if it's not going to verify. So one of the things they're very good at is looking at the verification, looking at what they outlooked versus what really happened. And then maybe if they see a systematic, we issued way too many enhanced risks this year, they might tweak things. They might pull back on that, or they might change the definitions of what probabilities will trigger an enhanced risk or a moderate or whatever the case is. So I can't speak specifically about why that is. I mean, there's probably 100 different reasons out there, but I'm confident that people are looking at that, and if there's something that can be done to fix it, it'll be fixed, or they'll at least try to fix it.
Scotty, you got any more questions?
I'm good. I had my microphone. No, I'm good. I've ran out of all my questions on my card, so I know you want to ask your last question. So go ahead.
Hold on, Scotty. You wrote down questions like you were prepared.
I got two.
We don't do that
cards. Here. 2 cards.
All right. Peter, Kit, Ricky, anybody else? Good?
I'm good.
Good. Okay. Yeah. One last question, Rick. I ask every guest the same question. We have a lot of, like Austin, we have a lot of younger viewers. We have a lot of teachers, a lot of people who have a goal in mind of going into meteorology, or they're mentoring a student in high school, for instance, who's wanting to do that in their future. So I always ask all of our established people in the weather enterprise, what is the one piece of advice you could give a teacher or a student, something to focus on, the one piece of advice you can give somebody who's wanting a career in meteorology?
That's a great question. One piece of advice, I think the one piece of advice would just be to do it. I mean, I was interested in weather, terrified of weather as long as I can remember. I was a little bitty kid. My wife framed something that's in my office when I was in first grade of a forecast I wrote, so I've always wanted to do it. And there were some roadblocks along the way and some bumps, and I didn't think I was going to get to do it. But things worked out, and I did. I'm not that great at math, to be quite honest, and math scared me, getting through all the math that you have to take to be a meteorologist in the Weather Service. But I did it. I wanted to do it so bad that I fought my way through it. So if that's what you want to do, if that's what you're supposed to do, then do it. It might mean making sacrifices. That might mean moving. It might mean getting a tutor to learn math. It might mean taking not just meteorology courses, but GIS courses or communication, whatever. I mean, if it's a passion, you don't want to let that go. I mean, meteorology is cool because even if you're not getting paid to do it, I mean, a lot of meteorologists are amateur meteorologists, and heck, I'd probably be doing 80% of what I do in my job if I didn't do it professionally. If I was just sitting at home, I'd have my laptops and all that stuff, and I'd be doing it anyway. So it's cool to have a area that you're interested in like that. But if you want to do it for real and get a job doing it, you just have to push. You just have to do it, and don't take no for an answer, and do whatever you can to get contacts and to make that dream happen.
That's stick to it. That's great advice. You saw my son that strolled through here a couple of times. He's hard to keep out when we're doing these shows. He got to meet Dr. Marshall Shepard on here, and he has already determined that he's going for his doctorate in meteorology also.
That's awesome. That's awesome. When I was that age, I had a meteorologist that somehow I hooked up with at the Weather Service office in Memphis, where I grew up, and I've still got a letter that he wrote me about, a career in meteorology, and it's on an old Weather Bureau. I'm not that old, but it's on old Weather Bureau stationery. So having a mentor, having somebody to look up to or to emulate is I think it's important. So that's cool. That's cool.
All right. Well, now you said you grew up in Memphis, I got one more question for you. I got to visit Memphis twice this past summer, but I need to know, where do I get the best barbecue?
Oh gosh, you're gonna get me in trouble. There's so many good places. I mean, there's to be honest, I was never one to really find the little hole in the wall spots there. Corky's is good. The Rendezvous is good. But you can be driving down a 2-lane highway in North Mississippi somewhere, and I bet there's some even better barbecue at one of those little roadside places. So it's all good. I'll just say that.
I kid you not. You can go on Facebook and find my bucket list. I have it wrote down. Eat the world's best barbecue. It's on there.
Yeah. Well,
Joey,
I don't know where that is, but that's what's going to happen one day.
Well,
Joey, where's that place that you took me in Memphis when we were going out to Oklahoma City? What's the name of that place?
I can't remember the name of it. It
was a chicken restaurant.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they do the hot chicken there. I can't. think of the name of it.
I think I know. I think I might know the one you're talking about. I can't think of the name of it though.
Yeah, it's on the little corner right there. Anyway, yeah, we went. I took the guys to get hot chicken while we were out there.
We've got one here in Oklahoma City area, and that's the only one that's in my brain. I know the name of that one, but the one in Memphis escapes me. But yeah,
that was the spiciest chicken I ever ate, and I got the mild kind, so I'd hate to see what it before. All right, well, Rick, we're way past 9 o'clock, so I hope we didn't keep you from anything you need to be doing. We really do appreciate you coming on tonight, and as always, we let our guests plug their social media outlets. So if you want to give out your Twitter name or anything like that, love to have you do that.
Well, first of all, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate you guys having me, and anything I can ever do for you guys, let me know. Yeah, I'm probably most active on Twitter. I'm OUNWCM on Twitter. I have a poorly maintained meteorologist Rick Smith Facebook page that I've been trying to do a better job at. I'm also one of the panelists on Weather Brains every Monday night at 8:30 Central. I hope it's okay to plug another podcast, but it's too late. I just did it. No, so that's a lot of fun to do, and yeah, I try to be as interactive as I can on Twitter and appreciate all the interest.
We watch you on Weather Brains every Monday, so we love that show.
I still can't believe I'm on there. I mean, that's just May was my 1-year anniversary, and it's still very cool. So yeah.
Yeah, we have a goal by the end of the year to have everybody from Weather Brains on our show at some point. I think we're down to Bill Murray. That's about it, right?
That's it. We've had everybody but Bill. So
yeah,
really? You can get Bill, surely. So
come Monday, you post with a stick.
Ask Kevin Silly about our show.
Oh, you had Kevin on. I bet that was interesting.
Oh, very, very.
You probably had to really pull stuff out of him. He's so shy and doesn't really like to speak his mind.
Kevin accidentally tweeted out the Google Hangout URL instead of the YouTube link, so we had ninjas and everything else coming in. So.
Oh Wow.
Yeah, we had to actually like shut down the show and reopen a new link because we had just so many random people joining. It was it was like
Kevin is something else. I was so glad when he moved to Wichita Falls. That's in our county warning area, so I'm glad I get to work more directly with him. And yeah, he's a character.
that's why now when we send out the link for people to join, we make sure you tell them don't pull a Kevin Seeley and
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah. That's important.
All right, guys. Well, we'll kind of wrap up. Peter, I'll let you plug your social media. So since you didn't get to earlier in the show, if you want to go ahead and do that.
Gotcha. On Twitter, it's WXRManPete, which is short for Weatherman Pete, of course. And I update all the time about weather in New Jersey and whatever. So if you're around that area, go ahead and look me up. I'm on there all the time.
Nobody likes Jersey.
Yeah, I know.
You ever notice how you have to pay to get out of Jersey, but they don't charge you anything to get in?
That's right.
All right, guys. Well, we'll conclude this show. I hope everyone has a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday night with Dr. Jamie Mitchell, and he's going to talk about the real risk with tornadoes. And after that, on August the 12th, we're going to have actually some of Rick's people out on the show. We're going to have Von Caster, Chance Caldarn, and Darren Stevens, all chasers out in the Oklahoma and Tulsa area. So
Cool.
they're going to be calling us in and talking to us a little bit about chasing this year out in the plains. And then we wrap up the end of August with a recap of the AMS meeting that took place in Raleigh with another Weather Brains panelist, Mr. Nate Johnson, as well as Chris Michaels from WCYB in Bristol. So that's our next month of August, and again, we appreciate you coming on tonight, Rick, and we'd love to have you back on some other time.
Anytime. Glad to do it. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and we hope you guys have a great and safe weekend, and we'll see you next week.
That's it.